Basically, in a nutshell, what Bruno said was, there is only one God, but God is infinite. He said that there is not one sun, there's an infinite number of suns. Basically, he said that, what we think of as God is unbounded. It goes forever. There is no end to it. And that the concept of the earth being the center of the universe is wrong. The concept of the sun being the kind of isolated sun or any star system being isolated is wrong. And this is like 1500, early 1500s. So basically what happened is the Christian church got wind of this. They didn't like people thinking that way. So they hunted him down. They put him in prison and they tortured him every day for 7 years and said, we will let you go if you recant, stop teaching that and become a Christian. And he refused to do it. And so finally I think they took him out in public and they lit him on fire and burned him to death. So I always love that story because he was willing to die to stay true to what God had shown him. And, then if you study the Raw books, it's very in line with what Ra said. And it's very in line with what I've experienced through my own spiritual practices. But where I'm going with this is that what Jung said, what Corbin said, what Ibn al-Arabi said, and other authors that have explored this is that the imaginal faculty is actually the only basis that we have for perceiving anything, and that there is no reality outside of your imaginal faculty. In other words, the imaginal faculty is the faculty of perception, and that if you are dreaming and you're having a lucid dream, you're having an experience, and that experience is coming by way of the psyche, the perceptual faculty, or the imaginal faculty, and there's nothing more real than that. So one of the reasons this becomes important is because there's a huge number of people out there, including people like my mother, that don't believe you can have any kind of a spiritual experience using any kind of plant medicine or drug. But the reality of it is that whatever you're perceiving is as real as it gets. Like right now, I perceive you on the screen. So to doubt that, I would have to doubt a lot of things, including technology. I'm perceiving that I'm talking to a microphone right now. So if I doubted that, then I would probably not have a lot of confidence that I was able to record a podcast. I've had a lot of dreams that were vivid and profound, and using my skills in dream analysis or talking to my soul, I came to realize what the dream was telling me, and it's inevitably turns out to be as real or as true can be. The point that I'm driving at to take us into this dreamlike nature is that there's two kinds of dreams. There's the kinds of dreams that you're not awake in. We have them all the time. We don't remember them. So for all intents and purposes, they may or may not have happened, because if you have no recall, you don't know it was there. But when you look at dream research and you look at sleep studies where they hook people up to electroencephalograms, you can see that they're dreaming all night, but they wake up in the morning, you question them, they have no recollection whatsoever that they were dreaming. And it's obvious from the electroencephalograms and the advanced technology we now have with AI and brain science that they are dreaming. So the point is, if you wake up to the dreaming, and as you know, there's entire dream yoga practices. It's like a whole field. I believe it's based in Buddhism, but I've got entire books on it. Fred Allen Wolf talks about it a lot. But I've worked with my dreams quite a lot. And I found that when I wake up in a dream, the first thing I got to do is say to yourself, Paul, you're dreaming right now. And then what I've got to do is hold the dream state. Because if you say you're dreaming and you just discard it as a dream, then you're out of the dream. But when I wake up in a dream and say, okay, this big snake is trying to eat me, I can actually change the dream by being conscious of the dream. I can tame the snake. I can sing it a song. I can put my intention into it. I remember I was doing a series of alchemical meditations. I'm trying to remember the author. You'd love this guy's work too. It's really Stephen Rosen.
Don't know.
Oh yeah, his book on alchemy is really fucking deep and profound. I'll dig it out of my library when I get a chance to send you the title. I don't have the exact title right off the top of my head.
I would love that. Yeah.
I studied it very deeply, and this guy's a really sharp guy on many fields. But anyhow, he gives a series of alchemical meditations, and I was sitting in a sauna in Alaska on vacation several years ago now, and I was deep into meditation, and it was a lucid dream state that I was in. I was actually in so deep I forgot I was in a very hot sauna meditating. I was in that damn thing for about an hour. I probably lost about 15 pounds of sweat. But in the meditation, interestingly, what he was asking us to do through a series of meditations is look at what's looking through your eyes. Listen for who it is or what it is that's listening through your ears.
Yeah.
You know, and so I went into meditation, and as I always do, I said to my soul, guide us behind what we see with our eyes to what's really seeing. And all of a sudden, I found myself walking in a jungle. It looked like I was on Earth, but I could have been anywhere. I don't know. But I realized that I was in a dream state, and I thought, oh, this is cool. Let me just see what's here. So I'm walking through this dense jungle, and I remember parting some bushes, and then there was like a dead log with moss growing on it. And as I climbed over the log, coming right at me was a massive, I mean, as big as a school bus, black snake with red eyes. And I mean, this thing was like 30, 40 feet long, and, you know, the size of the fuselage of a 737 jet. And my first reaction was, oh my God. And it was coming right at me like it was going to eat me. And I said to my soul, what do I do? And my soul said, let it eat you. I said, are you sure? My soul said, let it eat you. And so I did. And as soon as it ate me, my spirit body just floated right up through the body of the snake. And my soul said, see, you can't be killed. That's the lesson. But the point is that had I not been lucid in the dream, I either would have ran like hell from the snake, or the snake would have ate me, and I would have believed I was going to die, and I probably would have reacted as though I was dying.
Right.
And I would have had a stress reaction parallel to dying in a dream, which could be, you know, heart racing, sweating.
Right.
But my soul said that the lesson that you're getting from this is that you are actually pure energy, consciousness, and neither of those can die. And what's behind you looking through your eyes is that which is looking through all eyes, that which is listening through all ears, that is what is feeling through all senses, which is what you call God, or consciousness itself, for lack of a better term. And so how I'm trying to frame this is that many people would say, oh, Paul, that's not real. And I will say, okay, well, then how do you explain the fact that that realization changes the way I see myself, the way I see my life, the way I live my relationships? And so from Jung's perspective, Ibn al-Arabi's, Henry Corbin's, etc., they would say you cannot say that that experience is not real because you perceived it and experienced it, and there's nothing more or less real than a perception, and it is the imaginal faculty that is the perceptual faculty that gives us an experience, without which we would have no consciousness at all. So I'm kind of framing that with that context. You talk about quantum physics as revealing the dream-like nature, and I'm sharing here that my spiritual practices and plant medicine experiences have revealed that. the caveat being is if you're not awake, then it's just another dream and you go back to being the same village idiot you always were, no matter how much psychedelics or dreaming you do, which is why there is dream yoga practices. And having studied many mystics, I can tell you two right off the top of my head that stated clear as a bell that life is a dream. The universe is a dream. It's God's dream. And that was Yogananda and Vivekananda. And I've probably got at least 6 others in my library that have said the same thing. Some of the key authors of Tantra say that. So with what I've just shared, Paul, could you go a bit deeper into what you're specifically trying to convey when you say that quantum physics implies that we're really living in a dreamlike nature, if I'm using the right words?
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, one way is to, because I just want to circle back to something, the creative imagination. I mean, I know Jung and Corbin and Ibn Arabi, and they're, so well, and they're, I know in Jung, he talks about that the creative imagination is the primordial experience. Mm-hmm. It's what's via our imagination, we're creating our experience. And if somebody has an experience of, like, say, this inner experience in their psyche, if Jung were here, he would say, well, the test of if it's real is, does it work? Does it have an effect?
Yeah.
And if you have a particular psychic experience and it changes your whole life, your whole perspective, well, and to then somebody to argue, oh, that wasn't really real, I mean, it's really interesting because there are people who they'll have a disease. There's a patient of Jung, he talks about, who had this imaginary cancer. He knew he didn't have a physical cancer, but he just was completely afraid and terrified at that. He couldn't get rid of the idea that he had an imaginal cancer. And, and I actually go into this in the next book I'm writing, but the thing which is interesting to me is that, say if somebody came to him and said, oh, what about if you do the visualization that your imaginary cancer just gets dissolved by, like, light from, imagine, a deity, and then somebody does that and they get healed. If that person does that and they get healed from that visualization, from that imagination, and if somebody says, well, but that was just imagination that healed them. And I would say, yeah, and it was imagination that created the cancer too.
Right.
It's, it's our experience. That's what I was meaning when I'm saying we are creating our experience via our creative imagination, via our psyche. Now, one really powerful way of understanding when I talk about the dreamlike nature. So if we can imagine, here we're talking about the creative imagination, imagine we're in a dream. And imagine in that dream, you're having whatever perspective you're having. Say, for example, that in the dream that you're having right now, you're imagining that this world exists objectively, separate from you. Well, being a dream is nothing other than a reflection of your own mind, right? So if you hold the viewpoint that this dream world you're in is objective, then being a projection of the mind, it has no choice but to shapeshift and reflect back, giving you all the evidence confirming the seeming objective truth of your viewpoint. So now you have confirmation, that the dream, that the universe I'm in is objective, because that's the way it's manifesting, which makes me even more fixed in my perspective that I'm right, it is objective. And the more you see that, the more the dream just gives you the evidence confirming your viewpoint ad infinitum. And what I'm describing, that's a feedback loop, a self-reinforcing feedback loop whose origin is within our own minds. And what we've done, we've hypnotized ourselves. We've literally put ourselves under a spell. That's the mind virus. I've written 3 books about this mind virus, the Wetiko mind virus. And that's the affliction that our species is suffering from, that we've literally entranced ourselves. There's no black magician out there who's done that, it's put us under a spell. No, we are colluding in our own victimization. By the sense we're not fully consciously accessing our creative genius and expressing it constructively, it's as if powers outside of ourselves that are ultimately none other than our own energy co-opt our unconscious creative energies and turn it against us in a way that's just killing us. And that's the nature of our situation as humanity right now. And so what I'm pointing out is that any one of us really recognizing the dreamlike nature, and that's not hard to do. I should point out it's actually easier to awaken right now than it's ever been because of the increased pressure in the alchemical vessel of our psyche, right? If you're able to hold that incredible creative tension without splitting, out of that, according to Jung, and this is just his phrase, but I think we've all had experiences, he calls it the transcendent function or the reconciling symbol. The idea is out of that, feeling bound and feeling on the cross and, and all that, if we actually hold that experience with integrity without prematurely disassociating and identifying with one of the opposites and projecting out the other, but hold that experience that's very painful. But out of that experience comes this grace. Think about what happened with Christ after, symbolically on the cross. That's Jung again and again points out that was symbolic. Jung or Christ on the cross was symbolic of consciously holding the tension of the opposites.
Yes,
But then
exactly.
what happened? Then he attained the resurrected body through that portal, but yet he had to go to the 3-day descent into the underworld, into the hell realm. And in other words, and that's where he was like symbolically reflecting what all of us are being called to do.